You have probably heard that LGB International has claimed that from now on they don't want to be more LGBTQ+, they just want to be LGB because they just want to defend the rights of lesbian, gays, and bisexual people. So I want to read this news from an astrological perspective, bearing into account that Pluto is in Aquarius and that people think that Pluto in Aquarius will decentralize power, and that Neptune is in Aries and people interpret it as the birth of a new dream. Liz Greene says that Pluto in Aquarius could be actually the dictatorship of minorities, this idea that power goes to these groups that are considered eccentric, that do not follow the norm, and they might access power. Now, what will happen when they access power? What Liz Greene says is when the planet first moves into a sign, we're going to see its darkest expression. So these minorities could abuse this power. This Pluto is sextiling Neptune in Aries, and when I'm thinking of Neptune in Aries, I'm thinking of this idea of trying to reach for paradise. So with Neptune in Aries, we might believe that the only way to achieve paradise is to fight individually, to fight for my own rights, to fight for what I need. So these two planets together in sextile, collaborating with each other, can bring a drive towards individualism and division. As you probably know, LGBTQ+ is an umbrella term that can hold together people whose sexual orientation or gender identity diverse from the heteropatriarchal rules, let's say. Now, when the LGB International creates this split, what they're saying is that first they risk losing their own rights, and secondly, that these LGBTQ+ communities have been they use this word, barricaded themselves against all reason, and they have created an atmosphere where dissenting views are not acceptable. So as a Jungian analyst, the first thing I think is the shadow and the projection, and a person who is claiming, or a group, let's say, who is claiming to create this split because they cannot tolerate the point of view of the rest of the community, are accusing that rest of the community of being intolerant. So this is already for me a warning sign. The other warning sign is that the reason why they are doing this is that we risk losing our hard-won rights. And this makes me think so much of this Neptune in Aries. This idea that salvation will come if I fight for myself. I might not risk losing what I have already earned by trying to protect others. So Judith Butler said that gender is performative. So basically we learn the gender we are. We learn how to behave according to the gender we are told we are. And that's why gender seems so natural. Judith Butler is not against biological sex, but she's saying maybe there's something else that can help us understand what's our gender and not just biological sex. Now, she is a moon in Leo with Aries rising. So, moon in Leo with Aries rising, she probably knows something about what it means to perform. She probably knows something about the struggles of performance. What LGB International claims is that they cannot deny anymore that there's a postmodernist narrative that denies biological sex. And this has opened a huge wound in the movement towards lesbian, gays, and bisexual rights, especially at the expense of women and lesbians. So this is, of course, in my opinion here, there's a huge misunderstanding. First of all, they are creating a new enemy. Basically, they are saying that the reason why their rights are at risk is not because of heteropatriarchal ideas, but because these people who are a little bit richer in their thoughts, and they keep talking about something that does not exist, which is gender, because the only thing that exists is biological sex. And here I have a lot of things to say about this. Because the problem is, of course, not so much that there is this minority group that is oppressing lesbians, gays, and bisexuals, but the problem is that there's an ideology that is against both of them, both groups, and it is this group who is the real oppressor. Now, if we talk about this postmodernist narrative of biological sex, I want to quote the British Association for Biological Anthropology, that basically says that gender identity and biological sex, they are related, but they are not synonymous of each other. And they don't treat gender identity and biological sex as synonymous. And moreover, they add that biological sex, when they have to work with rest of bones, basically we call them osteoarchaeologists, when they have to work with bones and skeletons, these archaeologists have begun to express the limitations of their methods. And what they say, they define biological sex, and they say that it's determined by differences between individuals at many levels of their biology. So they mention their outward physical appearance, they mention their internal anatomy, they mention the sex organs, a unique hormonal makeup, genetics, and chromosomes. So basically, it's not as simple as having a vagina or a penis. And the reason why they emphasize these limitations in their ability to determine the sex and further on the gender of these excavations is because they cannot have access to soft tissues that would give them a lot of this information. Now, why does LGB International refuse to see that gender and biological sex are not the same? That gender is real. It's not a postmodernist invention. It's something that exists. It's a concept that can be applied and can be worked with. Basically, why? Because we are losing our own rights. This is what they say, right? We're risking to lose our own rights by defending this idea of gender. So basically what they're saying is we need to align with heteropatriarchal ideas that impose the idea of biological sex in order to protect ourselves. This is what they're saying. We need to align with the oppressor in order to protect ourselves, even if this means betraying our fellow oppressed individuals. And of course, this reminds me of Simone de Beauvoir, who is a Sun-Uranus conjunction. And she says, the oppressor would not be so strong if he did not have accomplices among the oppressed themselves. So Simone de Beauvoir was a Sun conjunct Uranus, and she also had Moon conjunct Aries in Pisces. So this idea of defending the oppressed, right? Now, Paulo Freire, he speaks about different ways in which the oppressor uses the oppressed to fulfill the oppressor's ideology, the oppressor's aims. And one idea is that the oppressed will seek to imitate the values and the attitudes of the oppressor as an unconscious way to aspire for power, so to aspire for status, by feeling like they are similar to the dominant group. So a lot of times the oppressed will start imitating the values, ideas, and culture of the dominant group in order to feel they are kind of friends, they are together. And this is also a form of colonialism, if you want. So colonialism is not just material colonialism, it's also the colonialism of our heads, of our way of thinking. And of course, this creates division and fragmentation. So this allows the oppressor to stay in a place of power because the oppressed cannot organize themselves to change the situation. And of course, all of this, I think it's so significant and so resonant of Pluto in Aquarius, fragmenting power, and Neptune in Aries, insisting on this idea, I have to defend myself. I can only find redemption if I take care of myself first. So, what do you think? What do you think about this statement of LGB International? And do you think it is representing the Pluto in Aquarius sextile Neptune in Aries, or do you see it somewhere else? Write your comments below. See you.